Hey, everybody. Sorry we're a few minutes late. We have a panelist who I think is going to be jumping on to join us in a few minutes, but we wanted to get started. So welcome to A Little to the Left. As many of you know, last month we did a stream on monogamy where we mostly critiqued it and especially the institution of monogamy and how it ties into marriage. Talking about why the whole institution of it is so harmful, but we did defend it as an okay option for people who just want to sleep and date with one other person. So don't let scummy people online tell you otherwise. Today, we are super excited to have an amazing polyamory panel to talk about the other relationship structures that you can choose for yourself. We gathered advice questions or any questions that you guys had through Instagram and Discord. But of course, as the stream is going, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and I will collect those for the end if they haven't been answered throughout the rest of the stream. So we're very happy to take those. My panelists today, we have LJ, who's just an awesome person. Hi, LJ. Thank you for being here. And we have Lua, as you all know, a big friend of the show, but Lua also has the ProfessorFlowers YouTube channel. Everyone's social medias and platforms are linked below, so please check everyone out after the stream. And to kick us off, I would like to ask you both to introduce yourself and let us know what was your pathway into polyamory.
I could go first. I got into polyamory. It's something that always sounded really scary to me because I was like, how could you even how could you have multiple partners? Because I always struggle, I still struggle with jealousy. But I remember seeing these YouTubers. There was two that really stood out to me. There was Surus. Surus does commentary on religion and things like that, and I'm forgetting Surus's pronouns, so I'll just say Surus. But Surus was talking about living with like uh oh, maybe I should just say they, because it's hard to not use that. But Surus talked about living with one of their partners, and their partner lived with another one of their partners. And I was like, why? Isn't that extremely stressful? And then Surus was just so chill about it, was just no, just we just all live together, and we hang out, and sometimes I do get a little bit of jealous. But then Surus talked about compersion and was but I feel happy for my partner, and it just seems really simple and really nice. And I was like, what? That's just not even possible. And then another YouTuber I got heard about polyamory from was Cat Black, and Cat Black just talks about it quite a bit. And I was like, wow, this just sounds like it could be really nice. It sounds like it could be also really hard, but it sounds like it could be really nice. And then I started dating my partner, and she's poly, and yeah, there's been a lot of ups and downs, but those ups and downs aren't so much with polyamory. It's more so about communication skills, things like that. But yeah, it's been really nice being poly.
Honestly, I think for me, it started with me understanding that I was aromantic. I have always experienced a lot of compersion, and I didn't exactly know what that was, but especially navigating relationships that were just um, more platonic in nature or friendships, and then never becoming interested in romantic relationships. I wanted to explore how to love people more deeply and more than one person at a time. And the more that I learned and leaned into that, the more I realized that there were words for how I was feeling, like compersion, and also that there were people who maintained and cultivated many different types of relationships with people, some romantic, some not. And after leaning into that, I realized that I'm a very polyamorous human who experiences lots of compersion, and I have had relationships that are romantic and also just sexual in nature, or quasi relationships and different types ever since that. But I think it all started with me discovering more about being a romantic, and realizing why I was really struggling to connect with those ideas in just everyday life, not even just in relationships.
And for anyone who might not know, can you define compersion as much as it can be defined?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to define it, and it's different for different people. But experiencing compersion is basically being excited for and happy and interested in someone else's joy.
Mm.
And that can look like how they're interacting with a partner or with humans they have close relationships with, or even the successes they have in their everyday life. And some will say it's a companion to jealousy. Some people feel like it's the opposite of jealousy, and I think companion is a better word.
Excellent. And Bellamy Rhea, is that how you say it? Welcome to the stream. So excited to have you here. We've been, the panelists have been introducing themselves and how they got into polyamory. So if you want to do that, we would love to hear it. I don't hear you if you're talking. I see you unmuted. You might have to check your mic settings. Sometimes StreamYard's a little finicky about mics.
It is finicky about mics, apparently.
There you are. Hi. Yeah, it is really finicky. It's like if you change anything while you're in the stream, I don't know, doesn't like it.
Okay.
But
well,
we can hear you now, so hello.
Outstanding. Hi. It is pronounced Rhea, but it's probably going to change sometime in the near future because my gender expression is ever changing. So, it's the great thing of not like updating my government stuff because I can just change my name whenever I want to. So, I guess you were asking how I got we're saying how we got introduced into polyamory, right?
Yes, and also I was introducing, I know you also have a YouTube channel.
I do.
That's the same as your name, so everyone can find you there after the stream.
Yes, thank you.
But yeah, what was your pathway into polyamory?
My pathway into polyamory started when I started dating. I was however many years, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not sure now, but I was dating, and even as someone that was monogamous, I didn't have a problem with like dating multiple people at the same time because you're testing, essentially. I mean, testing is probably not the right word, but you're trying to see who fits and who doesn't. So I was doing that, and then realized that 2 people fit in 2 completely different ways, and that both of those people were actually polyamorous at the time as well. Like, I didn't really care too much that they were doing whatever with other people. It was just like, meh, whatever. So I wasn't really looking for anything super serious at the time. But then I realized, I was like, well, like, I've never done this before, and if there's a time to try it, now's the time to try it. I had friends around me that were polyamorous, and I was like, you know what? Like, there's no reason for me not to have both of these people in my life in some capacity. Like, they feel different needs for me. So that's fine, actually. And that's how I guess I got going into it. I had the benefit of having someone that was actually a partner of one of my partners at the time, who I could go to talk about the things that I was feeling, not the things that my other partner was doing, not the things, but specifically how I was feeling about the situation, and was very much there to help, like, give me sort of like guardrails as I figured it out. So that's the story of how I got started into polyamory.
That's wonderful. So this might be an obvious question, but maybe not, because this was something we talked about on the monogamy stream, is that we feel, monogamy just in the terms of a relationship structure versus like the institution of monogamy. And polyamory are really more a spectrum than a binary. So I was wondering for each of you, how do you define polyamory and how it manifests in your life and your relationships? Because I think we have assumptions about what that means, but I don't think that everyone practices it or defines it exactly in the same way.
Where do I want to start? I guess I'll start. I don't really define like I don't try to define polyamory. Because like you said, it's a really broad spectrum. Like monogamy is like very much an on or off for the most part, I think. Because you're either with one person or you're not. But polyamory, like you said, is very broad in spectrum. There are people that practice like polyamory as like a primary partner. And I think I'm kind of in that area-ish with the understanding that I like to adjust sort of as needed. Like if I end up in a situation where like my current partner and I find someone else like enjoyable and end up dating that person, and then we just have our little polycule, then that would be dope. Like I'm cool with having two primary partners that are also partners. That's fine. But currently practicing very like, well, this is my primary partner, and I do a bunch of flirting and whatever else on the side, and whatever comes from it, I communicate with my partner about it, obviously, but whatever comes from it is what comes from it.
LJ, what about you? I think you got into it a little bit in your intro, but how do you feel overall that polyamory is defined or manifests in your world?
Yeah, for me, it feels like the easiest way to define it is just a decolonized way of navigating life and companionship. It's that simple for me because I think that there is a really wide spectrum, and it can start with like you love your kids differently than you love your friends and your family, and humans that are special to you can be close and just as important as a sibling, or people that you have romantic relationships with may not be engaging with you and fitting the way someone else fits, and that doesn't make it more or less important. I I don't know if that is because I'm aromantic, but the more that I have navigated life in this really authentic way of just experiencing humans and being open to whatever type of relationship we have, the more I've realized that there's not really any one type of relationship that feels like it's more important. There's not a hierarchy for me. It doesn't feel like one person needs to like complete me. I think I agree that monogamy is like one simple type of style versus like polyamory being truly an approach to life that is decolonized and about community.
And Lua, what about you?
Yeah, I think I have a similar take on like just like life being about community. There's something very communal about polyamory where like a lot of people will think it's about like, oh, like, well, you just want to hook up, or you just like, which it's fine if people want to do that. It's just like that's kind of like what all people see. But for me, like my experience with polyamory has been like very communal. Like a lot of my friends are queer and poly, and like we'll all just I guess maybe first I should say like um I think there's something like kind of like oppressive about gender, where like gender's like, well, here are the guys, here are the girls, and it's just like a binary. And then also like the girls have to hang out with the girls, the guys have to hang out with the guys, and like there's not like intermingling or intermixing, and unless it's for like a romantic or sexual pursuit or something like that. And the nice thing about being poly for me as a queer person, which I think also makes a huge difference too, because like most of my friends are queer, like we can just kind of like all be together in the same space. And sometimes people will have crushes on each other and sometimes not. And you can just kind of like explore that if it does happen. If it does happen, it's not a big deal. You don't have to be like, I'm going to stop feeling what I'm feeling and turn it off. You can be like, hey, like I'm kind of interested in you. And if the other person is as well, you kind of explore that. And maybe it does go somewhere more romantic or sexual, or maybe it just like you're like, oh, I'm not feeling as much, but I still want to just kind of be friends. And it just kind of like to me is almost a way to be polyamory is like a way for all of us to like be in this space and like have another feeling and just be like okay, like a romantic feeling or a sexual feeling, and just not have to be like, oh, I have to turn this off because I'm like literally not allowed to feel this. You can explore it if you want to with it. Like to me, like that's actually what polyamory is in a nutshell. It's very freeing and like kind of like allows me to like be in these other ways with people in a very non-oppressive way.
Well, thank you all. That was very beautiful. I loved all of that. And the number one question that I got from everyone throughout all the platforms that I requested was, how do you balance time with your different partners? I think that's what, yeah, that's what people are like, how though? So in general, you know, that question specifically, I would love for you to address to the best of your ability, but also just how in general do you practice polyamory in your relationships? Do any of you have certain boundaries that you have with your partners, or are you, I know usually it's a kind of a constant conversation with your partners. So just in general, yeah, how do you practice polyamory in your relationships and how do you make it all work?
How do you make relationships work?
Right? just a small question, just a little tiny.
Oh God, this is
Like
funny.
we'll be talking about this for the rest of the stream.
So for me, I think, so I very much, like, despite having a mentor, still ran into, I think, probably a lot of common problems with polyamory. And one of the biggest problems I noticed is people still kind of doing individualist things in kind of like a polyamorous settings, which isn't to say that you can't be solo poly. You can be solo poly if you want to. That's your business, not mine. But I noticed that a lot of people were doing, I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people were doing this thing. One of my partners called it like life islands. Everyone was kind of on their own. A lot of people were kind of on their own life islands. And then would just pop into people's lives as they wanted, but then would just go back to theirs. And then that was theirs and that was it, which I did not enjoy. Other people are allowed to do what they want, obviously, but I did not find that fun. So it got me thinking about how to like balance my time between partners, because that's a big problem. I think I did what a lot of like baby polyamorous kids do when they're feeling lonely in polyamorous relationships and like date more people, trying to fulfill needs that weren't fulfilled before. And I realized that I needed to actually pare that down, and to be honest with myself about my capacity to have time for other people and to work within those capacities. Not trying to give time where I can't give time, and not trying to have more people in my life than I know I can reasonably divvy up time to. I think that's probably like the biggest thing. The other part of it is just kind of like negotiating between everything just in general, like talking to your partners and figuring out what their needs are and what your needs are, and being able to communicate those honestly, and being honest about what you're able to do, and letting people kind of like it's kind of like putting everything on the table and then letting people self-sort and then negotiating back and forth. I mean, it sounds really like transactional, and I don't mean it that way, but communication is kind of just, negotiating between people more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that, because I think that's one of the things that when people are interested in polyamory, but it can be a bit overwhelming to think of. A lot of us here are introverts, maybe are shy, maybe, a lot of us are on the spectrum. So I think that there's this kind of idea that polyamory is just like being around a million people all the time, and you're just, constantly with everyone. And so I think it's helpful to think about, what do I actually want? What will make me feel fulfilled? Because I even do that with friendships. Like, how many friendships can I meaningfully sustain at any time? And let me just, nurture those relationships and not try to have 100 friends that I can't really have a deep relationship with. So thank you. I think that actually was really helpful. LJ, Lua, do you want to add anything to how you manage time with partners?
Yeah, I think this is honestly like, it's a piggyback off of something that Lua had started to say, and that's that exploring polyamory relationships with humans authentically is one of the best parts about being polyamorous. And also, when you're using that approach authentically, it's healing. So to truly be able to center yourself and focus on what needs and wants you're going to be able to meet for yourself, by yourself, independently, and then how other people can meet you in other places and what you can give to them and what that can look like, and pivoting. There's a lot of pivoting that happens in polyamory. I mean, I know we all like to plan. There's a lot of Google calendars out there, but like being able to pivot last minute and figure out what's happening is a skill that you learn when you're dealing with more than one human. And I actually am solo polyamorous. So
Mm.
for me, it feels good and grounding to focus on getting done what I want to get done, nourishing myself, and then reaching out into those, those different lights and connections that I have to figure out how to feel good and how we can show up for each other, which again just like wraps into that idea of community with people. So it's a practice every day. It changes and it's going to keep changing. So I just take it, honestly, I take it day by day sometimes, which I think kind of stresses some people out.
Can one of you define, what did you call it, solo polyamorous? Because that's actually a term I haven't heard before, so I assume maybe some other people haven't. I think context, I think I kind of get it, but just to, kind of let everyone know, what does that
I actually
mean?
don't know what it is either. I hear people say it all the time, and
Okay.
I forget to ask.
Good.
I can define it. So, it can look different for different people.
Mm-hmm.
It basically means that you are navigating relationships as a human that is maintaining a type of independence, or maybe some people can just refer that to like singledom, and you're still navigating and cultivating different relationships at the same time. So for some people that can look like not ever really cohabitating with people, or it can look like cohabitating with humans but not having like a certain type of committed relationship, or it can look like not ever joining finances, or all of those things at once. It really just depends, but you're navigating mostly as a human who is not attached to a bunch of humans in very specific committed styles. And also, most importantly, for my definition, is that when I'm solo polyamorous, and solo poly for me means that I'm my most important partner, I'm my number one, and there won't be a hierarchy that ever competes with that.
Damn. All right, I like that. Lua, did you want to say anything about kind of how you manage time with partners and your relationship structures?
Yeah, I've never dated more than 2 people at the same time, so I think anything more than that would be extremely difficult. I am not sure how people do that, but with 2 people, sounds like Bellamy might have had some
Really
experience with that.
in the chat. Don't do it. It's too much.
Don't do it.
But I'm I'm sorry.
You're good. I feel like there's maybe some stories in there.
There's some stories.
But yeah, I've only ever dated 2 people, and so at the same time, and so it's we've been able to like figure out schedules, and like we kind of get for me, like we've gotten into like a pattern of like, oh, I usually hang out with this person on this day, and then I live with my other partner, and so like that was able to happen more organically. Yeah.
With your the partner you live with, do you take time, like do you two still have certain days that are yours? Because I think even in monogamous relationships, it's easy to live with someone and then be like, well, I see you all the time, and not necessarily have time that's dedicated towards you being a couple. So do you and your live-in partner kind of make that dedicated time, or is it more loosey-goosey, like we're around each other and we'll just kind of hang out as we do?
Yeah, I think it's more like the loosey-goosey, like not that it's not important to make time. It's just I think for us, we already like naturally spend a lot of time together. And yeah, like we go on walks a lot and we eat together. So we just kind of spend a lot of time together very naturally.
So we had kind of a related question of how do you navigate polyamory under capitalism in terms of, having little time on your hands, maybe being exhausted from work, maybe worrying about money, just kind of or do you even feel like that is something you have to consider? But I feel like for a lot of us, that is something that impedes on our relationships. So just curious how that might manifest for you with, work schedules and everything else.
Well, so for me, I'm fortunate enough that the job I have doesn't require me most of the time to be in a specific place at a specific time. Because I'm an academic. In grad school, it's a lot more rigid, but because I'm an academic, most of the time I'm able to set my own schedule. So personally, the schedule thing isn't so much of a huge issue, like for me, but it's kind of what like LJ was saying earlier. Like, I budget my time like for me first. Like, this is how I am feeling, and this is what I need for these times. And then from there, kind of just like, again, just doing like, I'm gonna keep saying this, and I feel like the fucking like basic ass the polyamorous person that always says this, but like, just communicating, just constantly communicating with my partner and making sure, like, okay, like, what did they say? There's a thing that they say to me all the time, like, you're free to ask and I'm free to say no, basically, is kind of how it operates for me. So, if they're too tired and they need to go home and relax, they need to rest, then that's what they need to do. I'm allowed to be disappointed by it or whatever else, but those are my emotions to work through, and I can work through them like with my partner or whatever. But I don't like, I know the context that we live in, so it's not something that like foments in my relationships at all, because we all kind of understand that these pressures aren't from us. They're not our fault. They're, up here. The fact that we have to work and go and do this and do that, like, that's not a choice that any of my partners are making, like, voluntarily, or myself for that matter. So it's just kind of a lot of like grace giving for the other people and for myself.
And do you find that, because I know I've heard from some people who are polyamorous, they might live in community. Some who are disabled might get help from partners that are able-bodied or able-bodied in different ways. Like they might also be disabled but have different capabilities. And I think, I don't know if any of you have had experience with that, but it seems like something that could be really helpful to at least try to combat capitalism in this fact that we're, the goal of capitalism is to keep us exhausted and kind of isolated and feeling like we don't have time for other people.
Oh, yeah. So I'm disabled. Physically disabled. Well, I mean, it's all physical, but I'm physically disabled and I have mental disabilities too. And my current partner very much helps with that, like a great deal, for sure. And I've been upfront with it, and it's very much like a like I've told people, like the dream polyamorous like situation for me is like a throuple on a farm.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
That would be great. Because then like it's kind of like I guess, like, and I hadn't thought about it this way before, but it's kind of like people plug into your life in ways that like fill needs for you, romantically, sexually, or whatever else. But it goes much further than that too, because once you like establish deep connections with people and really start to build something, then they absolutely, like a monogamous partner would do that in some capacity, but they're limited as a human being. But having more than one partner allows for people to fill roles roles, whatever, that they're capable of filling without like feeling like they need to overextend themselves, I think.
And to me, that sounds like it ties in really nicely to LJ and Lua, what you guys were saying about community and how polyamory is so, or maybe should be so, community oriented. I've always found that really beautiful and compelling about people who talk, about how the more you can help each other and be in community with each other, the more you can kind of counteract the, aggressive individualism of capitalism and kind of help each other thrive better under that system. LJ, Lua, did you have anything you want to add to this conversation about polyamory under capitalism and work and how to balance all of it when you're exhausted? You're muted, Lua. There you go.
Yeah, my partner works from home, and so like, yeah, it ends up just we end up being able to spend a lot of time together. Like if she didn't, then that would be like extremely difficult. So I'm not sure what to do. That would really stress me out.
LJ, since you practice the solo polyamory, do you feel like that helps in this regard? So you're kind of maybe like Bellamy said, putting yourself first and then kind of like scheduling your spoons outwards from there.
Well, I think you're right. When you asked that question, I immediately equate it to like community and community building. Basically, I don't know how to compartmentalize capitalism out of anything. So the approach that I'm taking to my life and navigating how to combat those things is to show up for people, show up for myself. And I think most notably, the way that I can really affect what's around me is by how I handle metamors. I am not a human who is like, I need to be best friends with somebody who I'm like a metamor with, or who's connected to someone that I love, or is best friends or like siblings with someone that I love. But taking the time to navigate that relationship in a way that that person knows if you need support, because I am more directly involved in your community, I will offer that because you're a human, period, not just because of this connection that we have with this person. And that is something that I would do purposely to combat capitalism. And I would like to say that that shows up in all areas of my life, but I know that especially in situations that I've been in when it comes to like sharing cars, getting kids to school, like picking up groceries, like the spoons so that people you love can spend time with other humans that they love, or so that people you love can not be completely depleted at the end of the day, so that you can work in scheduling quality time and not just like running into each other at the end of the day is important to me. So I feel like it's partially community building, partially how I navigate my relationships with humans, but capitalism is always at the forefront of my mind. Kind of much like racism. It's going to be there. It's not going
Yeah.
so I almost feel like I wonder who asked the question, only because like, how can it not be a part of everything that we're navigating?
Right. Well, and I think that was the nature of the question is like, of course, it's invaded every space of our life. So how do we deal with it in this way? And yeah, I have friends who are parents, and I think what you were saying, there's such a powerful way to kind of disrupt the nuclear family when you're thinking about, yeah, how do I pitch in and be part of your community? Like, I'm childless forever, happily, but for me, part of that is to have the spoons to help other people with their kids and be part of that community vibe of like, let's all do this together and let's make it joyful. So probably, as you were saying, the bigger question I wanted to ask is thoughts that you all have on your identities as queer, BIPOC people existing under the cishet white capitalist patriarchy, and how that connects, and also with disabilities and things like that, and how that connects to your polyamorous practices. Bellamy Rhea, I just watched your stream with BP about dating as a trans woman, and I know you mentioned that being susceptible to COVID, has to kind of guide how you pursue relationships and like how you find people to spend time with and the precautions you have to take. So, and then on top of that, having additional concerns about your identity and who's going to be safe to be around. So I'm hoping that this can take up like a good portion of the conversation, but I really want to explore this deeply of, how do you engage with the world being people who have these identities and are conducting yourself in this queer way that is very counter to, what we're told is appropriate and acceptable.
There was a lot of questions.
Small question. Yeah.
There was a lot of questions. Dating and being not white is hard as shit, and was hard before I was polyamorous, and is still hard, but like different hard. I don't know if I would say it's harder. It's just a different set of problems. But adding that on top of, like COVID precautions, like that it kind of defaults just by the nature of it, because I'm higher risk. I'm not high risk, but I'm higher risk. And I mean, PICUs, like pediatric units are packed. Like it's still a problem, but like that kind of has to front load, because if that isn't safe, then nothing, like none of the other stuff can matter. Like it's just kind of like it has to be first. But then after that, it's a lot of sorting people, and not necessarily putting people like in boxes in that way, but like filtering people out. Using very specific apps and very specific ways to, kind of pare down like how many people I even start to interact with from the beginning. Because, you have to navigate, you have to navigate ableism, you have to navigate transmisogyny, you have to navigate transmisogynoir, you have to navigate racism, you have to navigate, all of these different isms. And it's kind of like putting together like a Voltron or whatever. Like I know how to navigate each of these things like individually, just as life experience. And then I have to put them all together when it comes to navigating them for people that I want to bring actually into my circle. And it results in very few people, but very high quality people when it does happen. The hangups that I'm having right now are, I don't like, my current partner is white, but I have a lot of aversion to dating an additional white person right now. My current partner is great, wonderful, fucking, like, and I hate the term ally, an amazing accomplice. She's wonderful. I adore them like a lot. But adding another white person to this dynamic would really like put me off. I want to be able to have a reproductive, like cultural, like relationship, especially like with another Black person, because it just hits different. It's not like, I don't want to say it's better or anything like that, and I don't want to like diminish my partnership with my white partner, because that's great in a lot of ways for sure, but it just hits different when you're with someone who gets it.
And LJ, I see you having a big reaction. Do you want to contribute to that before we dig into more aspects of this question?
Yeah, I feel like this is what we'll be talking about for the rest of the time. So the answer is everything. It impacts everything. It impacts your entire experience. From the very beginning, when people hear someone is like polyamorous, and what they picture is like thin white people in a cottage with like long arms. Great, beautiful for them. Also, it can look differently. And the fact that when people realize that I'm polyamorous and I'm brown, it's very much like, please don't sleep with my whatever. And I was like, who? I don't even know what you're talking. Who are you? I don't want to. It's just like this threatening thing that can happen, which makes sense
Screen.
because people of color, our POGM community is like, wow, you are threatening in every single way, including your polyamory, because it means that you're going to take this person away from me. And it's like, if you knew anything about polyamory, you would know, like, I don't want to take anything from anybody. We can share, first of all. I think that I agree with it hitting different being with a person of color. And I'm not afraid to say, like, it just is better. You just understand each other in a way that this other person will not, without saying words. You're sharing generational trauma that shows up in so many different ways, but you're also sharing so much generational wealth that is not stated, and there's not a way to qualify it in the world that we're living in. And so understanding that you're coming from a different place with someone who isn't going to, you don't have to do the work that you'd have to do with someone who is white is so different. You're automatically starting in a different space. And I cannot help but love white people. It just be happening. But there's work that is involved in that all of the time. Even when I get in those moments where I forget that somebody is white because I love them so much, I just get brought back down every once in a while. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a negative thing, but it's this reminder in my brain. So I think that it's being POGM, being a person of color, being brown, like changes everything. When we talk about capitalism and who's affected by that, when we talk about like the ideas that are out there and jealousy and compersion, like those are all they're all hit harder when you're a person of color.
Mm.
And Lua, I feel like you probably have some thoughts. Did you want to say anything here about this particular topic?
Yeah, like especially like on the topic of dating white people, like I think like in my experience, like I almost like whether I guess monogamous or poly, like regardless, like I like wondered if I should date white people because I had had these horrible experiences where like I have to explain what racism is. And, like I don't know, it's like ridiculous. I have to like be like, this is racist, this is why I'm hurt. And there's a lot of times people are very confused. It's like it's not malicious, but it's like that's like an entire world that's like really hard to engage with. And I think so my girlfriend right now, like she is really like she it's kind of amazing because even though she's white, I never have to really explain something. She is like invested in racism in a way where she's like had enough experiences with non-white people where she's like invested in ending racism because there's a way like she can really see how racism like hurts her, where she's like, I want to be in community with all these different groups of people, and racism makes that so much harder. And so she like feels hurt by racism in a way where like other white people feel kind of guilty about it or they feel ashamed. But for her, she doesn't feel those feelings. She actually is just she's a co-conspirator is what I'm trying to get at. And so that's kind of like a very ideal scenario when you're dating a white person as a non-white person. But even with that, there's stuff that comes up around like, you know, the people that they date, if they're whites, like having to like work things out with them and talk with them about racial stuff. That's something that's like complicated, and that's just so it's just like I guess for polyamory, like I have to think a little bit about like, well, like even if my partner dates other white people, like are we going to have these like harder conversations around race and talk about all these things as well? And so it would be really nice to just be able to date, or not just be able to date, but to also be able to date non-white people, because kind of as everyone's saying here, like it hits different, or people just get it, and there's a way that you can connect, and that's really important.
Yeah, there was something that you said, Lua, that I really want to like. I don't want to say hammer home, but add to. I will not and cannot date a white person that isn't already in community with non-white people. Like my current partner, and genuinely, like the reason why I think we get along so well and that I feel so comfortable around them, despite them. I mean, and when I say white, I mean like Irish, Italian white, like go outside, they might burn kind of white, like damn near translucent, but very, because she went to grad school with black people, established friendships, especially with black women, before she met me, years before she met me. Was already in community with, was already communicating with, and listening to other black people. I feel like I have to do significantly less to know like education at all. And I think if I felt the need to do education in the sense that like I'm trying to keep you from doing racist shit, not education in the sense that like I'm just sharing my culture with you, that is fun. I enjoy doing that. But if I have to consistently educate you, then I just can't fucking date you. Like that's just too much. This needs to be like like we're gonna communicate, we're gonna learn stuff from one another. That's fine. But this is supposed to be a reproductive relationship. And if I'm spending my time bringing you up to speed, then I'm not spending my time with you.
Yep. Yes, yes to all of you.
Heavy sigh.
It's so much work. And unless you are actively doing the work, like I also don't love the term ally, but I will use it for some white people. I don't want a bunch of allies around me though. I would like an accomplice, and I would also like them to know at the very least that that's something that we pick up every single day. Like I need you to pick that up and work on it every single day. And if someone,
and not with me, sorry,
no, not with me, yeah, no. And if you
Oh my
don't,
goodness.
at least at the bare minimum, know that that's something that has to happen. And if you don't know that I will be doing work that you cannot understand every day, then you cannot be in my space. And I'm not sad about it. I'm too exhausted. There's too much happening. We go outside and walk around and one person says one thing and you're like, wow, we're having a very different experience right now. And if you don't know that, then I don't need to be around you. And I love, love, love that you're like, that you both kind of mentioned, like, if this white person isn't already immersed in a community with different people, do not come to me with your white friends and your white family and all your white coworkers and tell me like you're doing the work. You don't even have people around you who are comfortable to spend time with you that are brown. Let alone like fuck you. I do not think so. You do not get it. So unless I see someone is immersed in that and knows that it's worthwhile to go outside of yourself and experience those things, I can't hang. And I think that's okay. I think more people need to realize it is okay. And also that the more POGM, meaning people of the global majority, are finding spaces with ourselves and relearning how to interact and relearning ourselves, not only is it healing, it helps us in boundary setting, because then we go back to these other spaces that are white populated and we're like, this is not it. I don't like it. It's not fun. It's not even half as fun. It doesn't feel as good. Are you enjoying yourself? I'm not. I'm out of here. Like, I think that the more time I spend with POGM, the more comfortable I am in myself. But it is also harsh to go out into the world and realize our spaces don't look like that. Even the ones that are BIPOC friendly.
BIPOC friendly meaning that you'll let it in the door. That's what the fuck that means. It doesn't mean anything else.
safe spaces means some white person is just like, hi, I put this here so that you know it's for everyone and not just the white folk. And I'm like, no, thank you.
I guess I'll say that, like, because so there's two things, and I think a lot of white people might hear stuff like this and get like really upset. And I would say, like, if it makes you upset, then I don't know, like, do something about it. Like, if you don't like that that's the way that is, then like you can do stuff to address that, and you don't need to come to me about it. Because it's not my fucking problem. Like, I'm sorry, but it isn't. That's your problem. But also to say that, like, it's so incredibly obvious, I think, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for me, it is so incredibly obvious when I come across a white person with seasoning. You know, like, it's very, very clear to me if you're in community with especially with Black people, but with non-white people just in general. Like, my partner is extremely awkward and like white in the sense, like, not even like when you look at them that they're white, like they're just white. Like, they're extremely fucking Italian, and it's adorable. I want more of that. I want more Italian people being Italians, but without being racist. Just, you know, be Italian, like, it's fine. But you can still, like, you can sense that it's there. You know what I mean? You can sense that it's there between how they communicate. You can sense that it's there because of how they move, because of what questions they ask, because of what questions they don't ask. Specifically, my partner has not once, not a single time, has come to me and said, hey, can you explain this racial issue to me? Not one, which is a big factor why they're around, because I don't want to do that when we're here. When we're here, I want to choke you, and then I want to sit down and watch a movie. That's what I want to do. I want to fucking educate you about racism. So, like, I know that they're already doing that elsewhere, and that's huge for me to know that they're already actively learning in other spaces. That doesn't put the burden on me.
It seems really simple to say, but we cannot say it enough. Like, I am not educating you. Do not come to me for that question. You know that white person that you talk to every day, ask your white friend. Like, it's good for other Pogum to hear. Just because you love your white whatever doesn't mean that you should be educating this human, protecting this human even. I mean, the amount of times I've seen people that I love who are Pogum, you know, try to protect someone by saying, this isn't what the person meant. And I'm like, we're not going to talk about impact versus intent right now. I'm just going to say, you cannot continue to maintain the situation this way. It's not, no one has spoons for that. And it's not fair. You just can't continue to do that. Like, check it over and over again, because eventually you will come across somebody who's not going to make you do that work. And it doesn't matter if they're white or not. They're not going to make you do that work. And if you're doing it, it's unfair.
Lua, did you have anything to add to that portion of the convo?
No, not really. Just lots of agreement with what we're saying.
Yes.
Everyone's fucking tired.
Yeah. And I think if I can suggest to my fellow whites, something I found really helpful was to consume media made by BIPOC people for BIPOC people, and just fucking consume it. First of all, just as art, you know, like, just widen your scope of what you're consuming in general. But also because I feel like in those spaces, you get to learn a lot. You get a lot of education, but that is not filtered and is not softened for you. And you get to hear how people really feel about stuff. And I found that really helpful. because I know some people, you might live in an area perhaps where you don't, have a lot of access to diversity or whatever. So I think people are like, okay, maybe I don't want to be shitty, but I don't know how to expand my knowledge without asking questions. And I feel like just consume stuff not made for you, and like really engage with it. And I find that, first of all, you're going to discover a lot of great shit. And then you're also going to learn a lot without someone having to sit you down and do that work with you. And I find that can be lacking in stuff done by white people for white people to educate about racism. That work can be helpful, but you're not really getting the human perspective, the impact, the, just exhaustion. Like when you hear someone being so tired about hearing or experiencing the same thing over and over, it helps you to really empathize with their perspective rather than just kind of like academically understanding racism. I think that's really important.
That's a good point. I think I want to add really fast.
Yeah, add everything.
If you're going to go the media route, which I think is a good idea, it would be to engage with it, but not to use it as a license to like augment yourself. Like if you watch Friday and then you want to come to me and start talking a certain way, I'm gonna walk away from you too. Like no. Like stand 10 toes down in your culture. That's fine. Just be you. That's what I want you to do. I want you to be you. I don't want you to try and be a version or a weird bastardization of me. That's fucking weird.
I think saying be you is a really kind way of, reframing how often white people co-opt and bastardize things from other cultures. That's really nice. Be you.
Yeah, and I think that is a really good point, because I think a lot of people consume media from people who don't look like them, whatever that means, and then feel like they have some kind of pass or access to that culture. And it's like, that's not the point. That's why I find media that's not made for you, because it's not for you. So don't fucking take from it. It's not for you. It's just there for you. It's like something that you can enjoy. And again, it's just a really good insight into someone else's lived experience, rather than it being like a way for you to be cool, or like signal that you're an ally because certain words or whatever. Just so cringy. So I feel like this was a big umbrella question, and LJ, as you said, with capitalism, being a queer BIPOC person is going to impact every single thing in your life. So do any of you have any more to say on this, or should I ask other questions and we'll kind of weave it into everything else, since it does impact everything else? Because I was curious, like, I think something that's come up that's been interesting. And Bellamy, is it okay to say Bellamy, or is it Bellamy Rhea?
Bellamy's fine.
Okay. Like Bellamy, something that was really interesting specifically from that stream that I watched is, and what you said today, is this idea that I think it's a very like white kind of maybe cishet, maybe queer concept of polyamory, is that you're going to be like drowning in people and sex and things all the time. And I think what I've heard from all three of you is that the way that you approach it, and because of the way that the world treats you perhaps, and how you have to be careful, is that that's not really how it manifests for you. It's not that there's not abundance, but it sounds like there's more of a filtering process than I think people would have thought. Does that resonate? Like you're not out here just hooking up with people constantly all the time. It sounds like you're really trying to make sure people are safe. And there's a lot of barriers that I think a white person wouldn't think about when thinking about polyamory.
For sure. I mean, even like without COVID as like the backdrop, right? Even if we just like wipe that away, this is still a factor. And I think it's kind of like, I've heard a few people, more than one person now, like analyze like dating on Tinder as a woman. And what they said is that women tend to be more selective out of safety. But that's kind of what it is. It is literally filtering people out, on the front end, so I don't have to worry about it, or have less to worry about by the time we're in a room together. And for that, then, and that doesn't mean that like I could have a ton of sex if I wanted to. If that was my goal, I could sleep with plenty of people, because there are tons of people out there that are very upfront, especially being queer, because we communicate about sex completely differently. But there are a ton of people out there that, if I just wanted to have sex, I could absolutely just go have sex. But that's not what I want. I've done that before. It's not terribly fulfilling. It was fun when I didn't, and that's kind of it. But now it is about having partnerships that I feel like go somewhere, and not necessarily in terms of like, oh, we're going to get married, we're going to buy a house together, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but in the terms that like, this is improving my life. This has value for me, not in the sense that it takes away like loneliness, but that it adds to what I already have. It is building something for me. And for that reason, then it's like, no, I actually have like less sex now. I think now, apart from like when I was younger and hadn't had sex yet, I have less sex now than I have previously. And my current partnership is very fulfilling. And I like that. I don't need to fuck all the time.
That's all my poly friends are like, I have less sex now. They're like, you think it's all about sex, but it's not. LJ, Lua, do you have any thoughts in that respect of just kind of this idea of having abundance, but you're also balancing out, trying to have higher quality and safer connections? And also, sorry to compile questions, but I'm also curious, Bellamy, it sounds like you use apps to meet people. So I'm wondering how you all feel about like apps versus do you try to meet people in person? Do you try to meet people through people? Because I think in general, not even talking about like monogamy, polyamory, whatever, but I think in general, people are very lonely nowadays and finding it very hard to have meaningful relationships in any way. And so I'm curious about how you all kind of find people to be in community with.
Yeah, I find I'm not opposed to using apps. I just haven't in a really long time. I think they can be a great way to meet people sometimes and be social, but I've had a hard time. I know people who use it for that, but I've had a hard time in my experience. For me, like being poly, like it's almost all through friends, and I think that's what's been so nice about it, especially as I'm comparing, contrasting when I was monogamous, when I was poly. It's like, just essentially what I've ended up doing is just ended up dating my friends, and then like there was a friend that I dated, and then we ended up thinking that we're better off as friends. But then also that was just felt really organic to just like, I think a lot of times people break up, they're like, yeah, let's be friends, and then they don't ever maybe a lot of people don't end up talking again. But for me, like, it just felt like really organic to just kind of like be friends, because we were already kind of friends who were dating. But like, I don't really know how to describe it. It's something that I think is like really profound, just like being able to potentially date your friends, and like it's just really nice. Like, you're not necessarily like meeting a complete stranger. Like, these are people that you already know and care about, and then just like cultivating some other aspect of your relationship. And then if that doesn't work out, just kind of not cultivating that aspect less, but just continuing a friendship. So yeah, for me, yeah. So I haven't used apps as much. And then I think just kind of driving the point home that like, for me, being poly is like really, I think, more so been about friends, almost more so than it's been about like romantic or sexual partners. Or maybe it's that they all tie in together so cohesively. And I can't imagine like going to a place where like we're like going back to a place where like that's super divided, if that makes sense. But I think it also ties into like the quality, like what you're asking about. Like, when I love that like this was brought up, because people think that like you're just like having casual sex all the time, and which is also fine. But like for me, that's not what it is at all. Like I think because I end up dating my friends, that higher quality is already there. Like there's like a level of like, well, I know these people's values. I know that I can trust them in these ways. And now we're dating or something. So I to me, that's been a lot more organic than apps. I'm really not great with apps personally.
LJ, any thoughts?
So I this question's hard for me because I'm a little different. I be having lots of sex. I'm bisexual.
I love it. Well, that's good. It's good to hear a different perspective, you know?
Yeah. So one of the reasons that I'm solo polyamorous is because I'm a human who has a high libido, and sometimes when I navigate my life the way that I do, it leaves a lot of opportunity open for casual sex. And that can be harder for people when a lot of people, even who are polyamorous, which I think was a different question, like still have some type of structure that is like, let's have conversations beforehand. And I think those are all fine. Those are good, important things. But for me, it's very much like, here's a thing, here's an opportunity, here's a vibe. I'd like to be able to go with it when I want to, like be able to experience that freedom as a single person would. So I don't know what the problem is with having like a bunch of sex. Like what is the problem with that? And if I can
There's
navigate.
not.
Yeah, and
not at all.
I don't think that you two are saying that, but the question, the way it is like formed is very much like, like, is it all about sex? And it's like, if it is that bad? What if it is
No.
for some people? So I think that it's different for everybody. I think that the question really is like, can you be free to be who you are in polyamorous relationships? And that's exactly true. You can be a human who has less sex. You can be a human who has good, connected, genuine relationships with friends, with strangers, with people on apps. I don't use apps either, but that's mostly because I hate them and I'm impatient. But I don't use them, especially for, creating any meaningful relationships. I'm a human who likes to go out and meet somebody and figure out what the vibes are. So I think for me, when I answer this question, it's very much like I do have a lot of casual sex. And sometimes that changes. Sometimes I'm, invested or interested in someone in a completely different way. And sometimes I'm with a human and sex is not a priority for that human in the same way. And that's okay. We can still have like a really magical connection. So I think it just depends on the situation, but mostly I am just having a lot of sex.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think for me the question was more just that people have an impression that this is how it works for everyone and that it's easy, and I'm just wanting to bring the perspective of like things that you might have to consider that someone who's white and cis wouldn't necessarily have to consider, rather than the focus on like how many sexual partners you're having. It's just more like, how do you navigate your lifestyle? What are things that you're experiencing that someone else just may not have that perspective? So it sounds like, so you're not on apps. Are you just meeting people out in the wild, like through community, or where are you meeting people?
So queer community is always so small wherever you are.
It's
And
very true.
that's like not a thing that I love because it creates like, it can leave room for a lot of drama. And like, I do think that if you're a person of color and you're engaging in polyamory, it leaves you open for that, like, you're threatening to me scenario. So I do try to engage with humans outside of my community often. I think more recently that has just been harder for me. And maybe that's because of COVID, maybe it's not. But there was a long period in my experience where I just would not engage with someone that didn't have several degrees of separation at least, or just didn't know anybody that was in my immediate circles, because queer community is fairly small in a lot of places.
Yeah. It's very small where I live too. It's like tiny. Yeah.
Which means you kind of have to have more conversations with someone. Like, what's the quickest way to figure out if someone is racist? Me and a friend of mine figured out a question. It's like, do you believe in affirmative action? Like, literally, like, lists of questions you can ask people. You can get in and out and be like, nope, not into it. This person's cute. Let me ask them the question. Maybe we can hang out. Because when you are like having casual sex with humans, like, you really do want to make sure that you're safe. Nobody wants to be fetished. And I think the topic is so hard for people that even in my experience, Pogum isn't really sure how to categorize what it looks like when someone's being fetished. White people don't talk about it. They do not be talking about it. So trying to figure out whether or not you're engaging with someone to authentically experience something together, that takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I guess. So I guess on the subject of apps, for me, it's kind of. I guess I call myself like an opportunist in that way, because I kind of have to be, because unfortunately, the queer community, like whatever the fuck that means, generally hasn't, and it's really disappointing that it's happening, but I've seen generally hasn't been taking COVID seriously. And of all of the communities you would expect or hope that would take that seriously, it's this one. So it's very much, it's very disappointing for me, but it puts me in a place where I kind of have to rely on apps and digital connections, because sorting through safe and unsafe places for COVID just takes too much energy from me. And people are so resistant to something as simple as like suggesting that maybe we should wear masks that I just don't have the fucking energy to do that with people right now. So in that way, then I'm very like ultra opportunistic, I guess, in the sense that like I meet you where I meet you and I don't care where it is. If it's Twitter, it's Twitter. If it's Instagram, it's Instagram. If it's Lex, if it's Tinder, which I don't fucking use because that's a nightmare. If it's Grindr, which I also don't fucking use because that's also a nightmare, then it is those things, and that's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it kind of has to be because I don't have many other options at the moment. So that's kind of the impetus for me, and also it makes it like even prior to COVID, it's just like another like kind of like a bolt on, like an augmentation, at least at the time, kind of like an augmentation, just another route for me to find people that I'm looking for specifically. I don't know if it makes things any better or worse, but it just gives me a greater pool of people to filter through, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, COVID's been tough. I feel like all of my relationships are online now because I am also vulnerable to it, and it's just been pretty isolating.
Yeah.
Although my online relationships are amazing, and very fulfilling, so it works. But did you, Lua, LJ, did you have anything to add there? Or do you want me to move on to another question? Or anything you just want to bring up too? I want you to feel free to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
I would just add.
LJ?
Sorry, I was just going to add, someone mentioned that dating apps are racist, and they are.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, very much so.
Everything is. Everything's racist.
Everything's racist.
Seriously,
Yes.
literally, just the sooner you accept that, the easier this is going to be.
Yes.
Yes.
How do you work against it? That's what the question should be. Not, is it racist? How do we work against this?
And Lua, I think you said you were good. Is that correct? Okay. So we had Bellamy, you kind of brought up sort of the steps that you might like, not being focused on, relationships going to have these particular steps. One of the questions I got was your thoughts, all of you, on relationship. What is it called? The relationship escalator, which is essentially just maybe dismantling the idea that relationships have to move through certain steps in order to be valid. People are also asking about relationship anarchy, which is something you hear tossed around a lot online. So curious if you have any ideas or thoughts on this. And I think tied into the relationship anarchy question, and perhaps also to the relationship escalator question, is how do you view hierarchy or the concept of hierarchy in how you practice polyamory? I've heard, some people online will say something like having a primary is hierarchical. So it's not anarchist, or it's not, liberatory. So just curious about your thoughts around these things. And to me, these things feel kind of white. It feels like stuff I would hear. I used to be in vegan spaces a lot, and it's something I would hear from white vegans a lot. It's just, just very kind of black and white ideas about how relationships are supposed to work. So understanding that I do not have an outside perspective on this, I'm curious of your thoughts and how this manifests for you and how things are in, BIPOC, queer, polyamorous spaces around these concepts. Hi, Bellamy, I heard you laughing. Do you want to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
White anarchists piss me the fuck off.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start there. I
Perfect.
guess.
I was hoping one of you would want to go into that.
I feel bad always going first, but whatever. I'm here now. White anarchists think anarchy means not white anarchists. That's probably unfair. But I've come across a ton of white anarchists that look at anarchy as like a flattening. It's like an everyone on the same, like yeah, okay, whatever. Like in the most basic of terms, yes. But hierarchy itself isn't a bad thing. If it is a primary partner hierarchical, I can see you making a valid argument for it being hierarchical. But so the fuck what? If it works for the people involved in that situation, then it works for the people involved in that situation, and it's none of your fucking business. It literally doesn't matter in that way. So, like, the only relationship anarchist that I've come across that I like is Khadijah and Bo, and that's because we're friends and I adore them. Every other relationship anarchist I've come across is extremely fucking annoying because it feels like they want to flatten things into I should be able to do whatever I want regardless of what other people want, essentially. And if that's how you want to date, then you can do that. But establishing like a framework to try and oblige other people to that behavior, I think is, we'll call it unnecessary. The way that I understand relationship anarchy, generally speaking, is that friendships aren't placed at a lower tier in importance than romantic relationships, generally speaking, is kind of how I understand it. I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's wrong. But that's how I hear most people talking about it. And if that's what you want to do, then I think that's okay. I don't look at things that way. Mm-hmm. And I don't look at things like romantic versus friendships in terms of like which is more important. It's that these two things offer me different things. Mm-hmm. These types of relationships fulfill different needs for me. So I guess on the subject of hierarchy, like there is kind of a hierarchy for me in the sense that like some things are more important to me than other things, but not in the sense that like I'm like ranking my relationships on like a fucking Excel document or some shit. Like that's just fucking weird.
Are you like, honey, I deducted 10 points today because you've moved down in the rankings. LJ, Lua, do you have thoughts about all of this is just something I heard come up in a lot of leftist spaces, and it's just, Bellamy, I agree, it's always kind of really pissed me off. Not to dissuade if anyone thinks it's valid. I just was curious if you two had any experiences or thoughts with this philosophy.
Yeah. I think for me, like, actually, wait, I think LJ, you should go first because I have to think about this a little bit more.
LJ's
Okay.
like, no.
Well, in my experience, I think that it's devaluing of platonic love to say that romantic relationships are more important. And I know that in my experiences, when I've disconnected from someone that I had a relationship with, it's been hard, it's hurt. But when I've disconnected from a zucchini, like a queer platonic partner, it was devastating in every possible meaning of that word. I have always highly valued platonic relationships and friendships and love. And I think most interesting lately is that, like, that quasi place where it's kind of romantic, kind of not, like something different, something in between. But the most important thing is that, like, this human means a lot to you, and you mean a lot to this human, and you can get on the same page about things and be linked in so many ways, and feel so important and not have something, not even have a label for it that makes sense, not even understand it completely yourselves, but it's something that drives the two of you to spend time together. So the idea of having hierarchy just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't flow well for me. And I definitely agree. There's so many people who are white. There's so many people who, like, make comments about what is important and what isn't important, and why we have to have anarchy. And there's privilege in that. There's privilege in you saying that you want to be a relationship anarchist, or white people saying, like, RA is the only thing to go for, because when I show up and I don't want my relationship to look the way that others do, or want to do something a little bit differently, and people are like, so basically you're a slut. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just take that back a little bit, because I don't know why when this white guy is yelling about it, it's like the only thing to do. And when I say it, I am absolutely just a whore. First of all, yes, I am. And that is fine. Second,
Yes, let's
like,
go.
you can shut the fuck up, because you don't actually even practice relationship anarchy. You're just abusive. I just hate white people, basically. And I also feel like there's validity in having the conversations about, is hierarchy important? Is it something we're falling into? I don't want to fall into anything with anybody. I want it to be intentional. I want to be present. I want to choose it. And I don't think that a lot of people are choosing hierarchy, even though it's what they know. And that is because they haven't deconstructed what relationships can look like. And truly deconstructing that, decolonizing your way of thinking, will open you up, in my opinion, will open you up to so many different types of relationships and love. And then you realize, like, you can show intimacy and sensuality with people that you care about, and you don't have to be fucking them. You can just be showing them love in different ways.
Lua, do you have your thoughts?
Yeah. I think for me, like, I don't think of relationships as, like, hierarchical or not hierarchical, which I think is why I was having a hard time thinking of how to respond. Like, I think they're literally relational. So it's like you have, like, a relationship with someone, and they have certain needs that you might need to meet. You might also live together or not live together, and those will all inform things about, like, your capacity to meet that person's, your capacity to meet that person's needs, and the communication around that like informs how much of yourself you can give to certain things, if that makes sense. And so like naturally, like you're gonna like, and I guess like some people might call that hierarchical, like if you're like maybe prioritizing someone in a certain way or something like that. But to me, it's not like a rule, like this person's like just naturally like you're closer to certain people, and other people you're maybe is not. And sometimes other people need more from you, and other times people may not. And so like to me, it's not necessarily about like a hierarchy or not hierarchy. It's like, well, how much of these people's needs do you want to meet? How much can you give? And I'm not a fan about like making a rule one way or another. Like when I hear that people have a primary partner, like I'm like, maybe I, misunderstanding them and not understanding correctly. But like, does that mean like if you're dating someone else that like you just literally can't have like a certain level of they can't be in your life a certain amount, or like they can't have a certain level of intimacy? Because I guess for me, I just figure like if I became that close with someone, then I probably would become more primary in their life. And if I didn't, then I probably wouldn't. And to me, that's all just very relational. That stuff kind of just like happens organically and is constantly changing. And to me, that's more of how I kind of view things. But I wouldn't necessarily like make a rule about it, or be like, this is just my primary partner. Like, I guess for me, I'm just like dating. I guess this is maybe what people call relationship anarchy. I'm not sure, but like I'm dating people, and as I'm getting to know them, and I'm just trying to figure out people's needs and if I can meet them or not, and if that's reasonable, and that will just kind of form bonds where I'm like closer with people, or maybe other people I'm not as close with or don't know as intimately.
Yeah, and I think relationship anarchy is kind of defined differently depending on who you talk to. Like any theory, I mean, anarchy itself is sort of the same thing. But I've heard people, yeah, basically what you're saying, Lua, which I really like, is just the idea that like things should work for you and be fluid. And I just bristle anytime someone's like moralizing a certain structure and telling everyone that that's the structure that they should follow, or else they're like a bad person, which is how I've had it presented in certain spaces. So I love, like, even with you three, I feel like you all kind of approach things differently, but like still under this umbrella of community and polyamory and, liberatory practices. So I think we've gotten through most of the preset questions. I do have just a couple kind of specific questions that I got submitted from people, and we had one that was submitted in the chat. So, but I know I want to end in like 25 minutes to be conscientious of everyone's time and spoons. So did any of you want to bring up anything we haven't talked about yet that you feel is important? Because I want to prioritize that before I get into the listener questions.
Yeah, like there's just one thing. There's like this meme I saw where it's like, this could be our polycule or something. And it's like everyone is like on the bed playing video games or something. And it's like, this could be our polycule, but like you won't da 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 da. And for anyone who's watching, like a polycule is I guess it's just like a bunch of people who are poly together. I can't find it. But I just thought it was like a really sweet meme, because it was just like, I don't know, to me, like that's what polyamory has been about to me. Just like, I don't know, just being able to be like, I like to, like, LJ, when you talk about like having like really close friends and like almost like a romantic feeling for your friends or something. Like I love that. That's like the highlight of my life. And just being able to be so open with your friends. I guess that's what polyamory has been for me. Like it's a side of myself that like I just didn't even, I mean, I had very intimate friends, were like not sexual romantic, but like we're really tight. I've had that before polyamory, but there's like a certain freedom with my friends that I discovered that I didn't even know that I was missing when I became polyamorous. It was very freeing. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I wanted to share, like, when you're saying that some people think like hierarchy's bad, um, and some people don't, or might think it's one thing or another, like it changes too. It's fluid. And if you're in a relationship with someone and they do need more and they need something, just because they are your primary in that moment or your priority in that moment doesn't mean that you actually have hierarchy. It just means that
Mhm.
you prioritize needs and wants.
Yeah, totally.
Literally.
It is
Just like
something that
any relationships in your life.
Literally.
yeah, and I think it's something that polyamorous people have build that skill up because they kind of have to. It's like, let me say, okay, I would not suggest that what I would suggest is that you figure out how many partners is too many partners. And I
Mm,
know that 6 is too
mm,
many for me. And I feel like if I have 6 intense engagements with people, I'm going to learn really fast like how to prioritize the things.
mm,
Like, if it's, like, spending quality time together, having that one hard conversation, making sure that we're all pulling together because this person doesn't have a car and the kids have to get to school, like, it's just all of these things, and I think being good at prioritizing and, again, pivoting, which is something I think polyamorous people are good at, doesn't necessarily mean that you have a primary partner, and it's also not necessarily a bad thing to have a primary
mm.
or to follow hierarchy at all. My question is, like, are you falling into that, or are you intentionally taking time to think about what you want?
Mhm. That's great. Cosign being intentional, and would say, and I think I might have said some version of this earlier, but be honest with yourself first and foremost. Understand you're a human being and you have limited time. I don't care if you want to have 40 partners, that's your business, but you're not going to have time for 40 partners. I'm sorry. That sucks. But that's kind of the limits of the world that we live in. Like, even if, we didn't live with capitalism or whatever, you still have a limited amount of time, and people have needs and wants. And what I've noticed is that, like, people that have a lot of partners tend to have partners that also have a lot of partners, and it's because people aren't getting needs fulfilled. So they're trying to add people to fill those needs. And I say a lot, I mean like a lot. Like, if you can handle 6 partners, if you can handle 5 partners, then you should have 5 or 6 partners, right? Like, that's you, and that works, and that's great. But you need to be like, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm communicating properly here, because I don't want to throw shade at LJ, because LJ's doing what LJ's doing, and it works for LJ, and that's wonderful. But I just want to make sure that people understand that, like, you can't do everything that you want. Like, it's just outside of partners, just in general, you can't do everything that you want because you're a human being. You're limited. So accept your limits and then operate within those limits. Figure out what those limits are, and then be honest. And you're going, like everyone else is saying, you're going to have to prioritize. You will. Even if you don't want to, even if you resist doing it because you have some idea in your head about relationship anarchy or whatever else, at some point you're gonna fucking have to, because either your partners are gonna bring it up to you, or they're gonna start leaving, or do the thing that I think like a lot of polyamorous people do, where they just kind of like go away and don't say anything. But that's gonna happen, and you're going to eventually get to a point where you start feeling I think generally like start feeling kind of lonely. Like, the loneliest time I ever had, like just as a person in romantic relationships, was actually early on in becoming polyamorous and having 4 and 5 partners.
Oh my god, that's so real.
Because there was no, 1, I wasn't being intentional. 2, we weren't communicating effectively. And 3, I wasn't establishing my needs, and I wasn't having my needs met. And despite having however many partners, however many people that I could call to sleep with, to hang out with, it was extremely lonely.
That all makes sense. We have to take care of ourselves, which is also, that's just a thought that people can do to, decolonize. It's like, worry about other people, give, and like, well, hold on, let's take a step back. and nourish. That starts here. And then we can possibly nourish other people, build community. I think those are important things.
Yeah, I think intentionality is really powerful in just all aspects. I think questioning the scripts that we're given for our lives is, very powerful. So we had two, I think, pretty good questions come in the chat. The first one, sorry, I'm trying to scroll up to find it. So Margot asked, I'm curious to hear about experiences with jealousy and polyamory. I personally struggle with this, but also know I feel suffocated in monogamy. Oh no. I think this is something a lot of people can relate to. And Lua, I know you, for instance, said you still even struggle with jealousy. So do you have any just kind of tips on how someone can work through that or manage it in order to have healthy polyamorous relationships?
Yeah, I think jealousy is not going away. Like it's like a very human emotion, and like my girlfriend talks about this a lot. Like she talks about how like just like even like when there is like I don't think she said this example, but this is what comes to mind. Like even when there's like a baby and there's like I saw this video once where there was like a baby and then like the mom got like a baby doll or something and just pretended to be like taking care of this like fake baby doll, and the baby gets like really bad and then like pushes the baby doll over, just like, and just it's just like jealousy is a very human emotion, and that's gonna happen. And for me, like what has really helped is like being with my partner. Like I know that my girlfriend, like she might be interested in other people, but that doesn't make her less interested in me. Like being able to trust that, like, and then even of course, like if she starts seeing someone else, like I start to get jealous, and I'm like, oh, like what if I'm? But the jealousy is more like, oh, like what if I'm not making you happy anymore? Like what if this new relationship is actually just like you getting bored of me, and now you want to be with someone who's more funner and better? And at that point, like she'll usually give me reassurance and be like, no, like that's not what's going on for me. Like I really do appreciate you and value you. And I'm able to believe her. And so like that's, and then like that, so a lot of that comes down to communication reassurance. So it's like, yeah, there's like definitely people where I could not be poly with, like with my ex, like he always compared me to his ex, and I felt awful because I was like, I'm never gonna be this person. So that would have been an awful, horrible situation to be poly with. But with my girlfriend, like it's really healthy. Like I know that she's just simply interested in other people, and she's also still interested in me, which is why she's still dating me. And when I ask for reassurance, like she can give me that reassurance. And like another thing too that's helped me is like there'll be like a period where I'm just kind of like getting used to her seeing someone else, and I will be like really jealous and anxious and like, oh no, like for me my jealousy is like, oh no, like she's not interested in me anymore. And then to kind of like let time go on and be like, oh, like she's seeing me and she's also still interested in me, or sorry, she's seeing someone else and she's also still interested in me, and like things are fine. So sometimes it takes like an adjustment period, but like really it's like I think there's actually very few people I could be poly with because we have to have that good communication, trust, and reassurance.
I love jealousy.
Same as my girlfriend, she loves it. She's like, ooh, I love jealousy. I'm like, what?
Yes, I also love anger. I think that all of our emotions are valid and all of them are helpful. And for some reason, the patriarchy, these ones get really bad raps. And I think that when we hold on to and honor our anger and our jealousy, we can learn so much. But the idea is to throw them away, to get them off. I don't want to feel this. Get it out of here. What's wrong with me? I shouldn't be experiencing this. And that's just so far from the fucking truth. Which is also about decolonization, which I can talk about forever. But basically, when I experience jealousy, which I do agree is not as often, and I think it is valid to say that that's really hard to deal with, I ask myself if I have a need or want that I can fulfill myself. If there's something that I can do for myself, why don't I do that? I am free to do that for me. If there's something that I want or need from a partner, then I can think about it, ask for a time to express that, and then go for it. And likely the partner is going to say exactly what you said, like, no, I also love you. I think you're so great. I'm just excited about this one person or this aspect or this thing or this job or this place. And that's all okay. But we can figure out a way to work through that after we've held it, after we've honored it, after we've sit with it. And I don't understand the need to cast it off, but I like to lean into the hard things, and that's not easy for everybody. I just want to say, I know that it's hard. I know that it takes a lot of energy, but you're going to keep experiencing it. I'm so glad you said that. It's not going away, and you don't want it to go away. It's such a good motivator for figuring out how to love yourself. It's such a good motivator to figure out how to tell people how you want to be loved. And those are good things. These are good emotions. I love them.
I want to co-signing what both of you have already said, for sure. Major foundation of my PhD is like studying emotion. And I agree that all emotions are valid. Every single emotion that every single human being feels is valid, because you don't have control over which emotions you feel. You have control, however, what you do with those emotions, and all actions in response to emotions are not valid. Feeling jealousy is fine. And like LJ is saying, it gives you information. You need to learn how to interrogate your emotions and to ask yourself, why am I feeling this? I think there's a tendency like a general tendency to, when you feel something, immediately externalize. What is making me feel this way? Like outside of yourself, instead of starting with you and asking yourself, why do I feel this? I definitely still feel jealousy. And like LJ said, that's fine. Good, even. It's an emotion. It's just an emotion. It is amoral. It has no more value than any other emotion you feel. It's just an emotion. It's just jealousy. And yeah, lean into it. I don't mean lean into it in the sense that like make yourself jealous, but lean into it, feel it, and ask yourself, why am I jealous? What is it that I am feeling, and why am I feeling this emotion? And then after that, what LJ said, what do I want to do about it now? If I'm feeling jealous, I can, and I was snapping and clapping about it because I fucking adore this, and I love this for you, Lua. Because I'm the same way. Sometimes it's just about wanting reassurance. Nothing may need to actually change. You're feeling like, oh wait, like I had a similar conversation with my partner before. I like all types of people, right? Tall people, short people, big dicks, little dicks, no dicks, whatever. Like it's wonderful. And there's something to appreciate about different people just as they are. So I think there's this sort of like what's the meme from Twitter? It's like, that's a whole different sentence or whatever. Like, yeah, I like dating shorter people. That doesn't mean I don't like dating taller people. But if I have a shorter partner and start dating a taller person, I'm talking about enjoying the fact that they're tall. It might make my shorter partner feel like I don't value their body, but that's not true. I like that you're short, but I like that you're short. That's great. I also like that this person is tall, and those two things actually have no correlation to one another. They're just those two things. And a lot of times the solution to that sort of issue is reassurance. And it's okay to say, hey, I'm feeling insecure about my body because this other person has something I don't have. Like, what is, like, it makes me feel X, Y, and Z. And then your partner can then communicate with you like, no, like, I love that they're, this thing, but I also love that you're this thing as well. It's not, it doesn't have to come. I think there's like an assumption, generally speaking, that like with a negative emotion, quote unquote negative emotion like that there needs to be a change, and that I don't think that's necessarily true. It's really just about like examining, like fundamentally about examining why you're feeling that emotion, and what it is. I think generally, probably more than anything, what it is you're afraid of, and then communicating that fear and making it known. It doesn't mean that anyone's doing anything wrong. It just means that you're feeling an emotion and we can talk about it. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, I feel like being poly has like kind of like forced me to like sort out my feelings in a way that I wish I had done before. But like if I'm feeling jealous about something, the immediate reaction is like to feel, at least for me, like I don't want to speak for anyone, but like to feel hurt. Like, oh, I feel hurt about something, like this person needs to change. And then there's like a lot of moments where I'm like, I have to like stop myself and be like, is that what's happening? Like, what is happening if I feel jealous? Like, what's actually going on? And I'm like, well, for me, it's 9 times out of 10, it's like I feel really insecure about something. It's like, well, what do I feel insecure about, and like why? And it could be like, well, I feel insecure because I feel I've asked for this need to be met, and my partner's like meeting it with someone else or something. And that's something that it's like, okay, well, if that is the case, I have to talk about it with my partner. Or me feeling insecure could literally just be like, well, I feel insecure because I have abandonment issues, which have nothing to do with my partner. And, what they're doing is actually something you agreed was totally okay. And so I probably should just talk to my partner and be like, there's like a lot of times where I talk to my partner, I'm like, you didn't do anything wrong. Like, I just feel like really insecure right now. And can we talk about it? And so anyways, like, long story short, like, it's just really like pushed me to unpack, sort out, like, when I'm feeling jealous, like, what does that mean? And like, how can I respond to that without just like lashing out or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
These were really beautiful answers. I'm glad we had this conversation. I wanted to include BP. So Big Villainous from Overthrow Media. I have their YouTube channel linked below as well. They were going to be on the panel today, but couldn't make it. But I want to include, they say, I feel jealousy comes from insecurity. When I'm insecure, or when I'm secure in a relationship, I have zero jealousy. If I know that I'm in your heart, I'm not jealous. And said their ex used to get insecure because they weren't jealous, which, yeah, can be really difficult. I think we equate, I think we're conditioned to equate jealousy with love and care. And so I think that can also be maybe the other side of the coin of people having a hard time with you not being jealous or not exhibiting that jealousy in a certain kind of way and thinking that means that you don't care or love them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, jealousy for me is almost always like an insecurity. It also, it's like kind of a lot of times has like nothing to do with them. So it's weird to me. It's funny to me to hear that it's like about well, so I guess it does have to do like a little bit with like, oh, I like hope they care about me. But for me, it's like I have abandonment issues that are like, that I know are like from all these other experiences in my life, and then I have to do my work to like not get make my abandonment issues like everyone's, or to like lash out because I have my own abandonment issues from like previous experiences. So that's just interesting to me that like a lot of people, I've noticed this, especially like on Twitter, I saw this horrible post where it's like, here's how you can make your boyfriend jealous. And I was like, what? That is so messed up.
It's terrible.
Yeah, I was
That's
like,
how I feel. Sorry, that's how I feel about that topic. That I'm sorry, BP brought up. Like, for your ex to feel upset that you're not jealous, that's so toxic. It's very much like, people think if I make someone jealous, that means they care about me, because that is what our society portrays, which is colonized thinking. It's not about, love and expression and care. It's about like, this is mine and only mine, and this is what it looks like because we can protect it and no one else can have it. Like,
and my identity and my self-worth is coming from that dynamic, right? Like, I think I'm valuable because I own this person and they own me. I dated someone a long time ago who I had dated someone very controlling, and then I dated someone very not controlling. And I did that. I had this like meltdown one day because he wasn't jealous. And he was like, I'm never going to be jealous. Like, it's just, he's like, I love you. I think you're amazing. I'm just never going to be that guy. And it really helped to like click me out of like doing the introspection to be like, why am I equating jealousy with love? Why am I equating this controlling, abusive, scary behavior with love? And there's a very obvious answer, which is daddy. I had to work through my daddy issues. But it is, it is something, I think, LJ, I loved what you said. Like, I think it can be this beautiful, informative, and Lua too, like curious entry point into like, okay, something's coming up for me, and like maybe it's enjoyable, maybe it's kind of fun, maybe it can add a dynamic to my relationship, or maybe it's something that's like, oh, I've got something I need to heal, or I have a need that's not being met. But it doesn't mean love. I think that's, for me, was a really important lesson in my life, is like, jealousy does not mean love. It's usually not even really about you. It's about the person feeling the jealousy. It's not necessarily about your love for them.
Yeah.
I wanna add, I think, that I actually like making people jealous, but like consensually. If you want to feel jealous, that's fun. Oh no, I'm not a brat. I'm definitely a dom. But I guess to be plain about it, like I will cuck the shit out of someone. That is fun. I like making other people jealous. But the thing, fuck, I lost. There was one other thing that I wanted to make sure that I said, but now I'm losing it. Oh, the thing I think that actually helped me the most with getting rid of unwanted feelings of jealousy, which like I still have, but like the kind of jealousy I think that turns you into a controlling person. The thing that helped me get rid of that the most was reframing what was happening. So instead of being jealous of another person, or jealous in the sense that I'm insecure about something that I might be feeling or whatever, I turned it into appreciation. I've learned to appreciate that my partner found another person that they enjoy being around. And that's great. I want my partner to feel good, even if I'm not the direct source of those feelings, because I care about my partner. This isn't about me wanting to feel like I'm the one that makes my partner feel good, which does happen. I do like being one of the people that makes my partner feel good. But the idea that I would be upset that my partner feels good with someone else, as opposed to now being appreciative that my partner had an experience or is having experiences that makes them feel good, makes dealing with or not feeling jealousy, I think, a lot easier, because it makes it much less about it. It's kind of like removes me. Well, I don't know if I say remove, it almost like puts me into the situation, not in the sense that I'm in that dynamic, but in the sense that like I'm observing it and just appreciating what it is and what it does for the people that are involved.
So you cope with those feelings by reframing it for
Right.
yourself, which is adorable.
Right.
That's so cute. That's adorable. I love it. I think that's sweet. That's nice. Like, I think it's okay if you feel neutral, or even if someone doesn't feel happy about it. But the fact that you like cope by reframing that, I think that's really sweet.
Oh, thank you.
It is really sweet.
Go ahead. My girlfriend, I don't know if I'm probably gonna botch this because like I don't really understand it. But my girlfriend, like a lot of times, like likes the feeling of jealousy, and like she'll like she, I don't know if I'm like sharing too much. Am I sharing? Because she's not. It's like she like gets like turned. So there's like ways where she like has like a relationship with it, where like she'll describe like her partner like going over to someone's house and then like coming back, and then or going to someone else's house and then like them coming back, and then her being like a little bit jealous, but then she's like really excited because like then they're going to be together, and just like having like this relationship with jealousy where it's like something that turns her on, but it also like spices things up. And I'm probably just botching this because I don't feel this way, and I'm like, when she says that, I'm just like, what? I'm like, wait, explain it again how this works. But essentially, like I get the idea that like she like reframes like what jealousy means, or like I don't know, like the fact that she can, like, to me, like jealousy is like such a devastating thing, and it's something that I like have to work through. And the fact that she can feel feelings of jealousy and like have it be like a positive experience is something that just like kind of blows my mind. So I don't know. I just want to throw it out there to people that like you can have also a relationship with jealousy that's like positive and uplifting. I don't get how, but it's possible. So.
Don't ask me about it. But
I mean, I get it. I get it. I
That's how I
understand.
feel, because I do not get excited when I experience jealousy, but I do get excited when I experience jealousy, because I know that it's going to tell me something about myself or show me something that I have not been able to see up until that moment.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like, it's purely, I didn't think of that. I would also like that. I would like to do that with this human.
Mhm.
I would like to experience that with this person. And sometimes it is, in a way, very similar, because I'm like, listen, I don't want to go to that thing with you, and I don't want to go hang out with that person like you do. But you want to, and you're going to go do it, and you're going to have fun, and that's exciting to me, and it feels good that you went there and you had a blast. I didn't love it, was not into the idea, but like, I'm happy that you're happy. I'm jazzed about it.
Mhm.
I'm excited that you felt good and sexy when you're with this person, and I like it. Like, it's a very good feeling for me. And also, it helps me to stay curious. And I think that's something that everyone period should feel, especially the white people who are wondering like why they're doing what they're doing, why they're feeling how they're feeling, why they're reacting the way they are. Like, stay curious, like, question yourself, like, why am I feeling this way? What is coming up with me? So I do like, I think that jealousy and anger are some of my favorite emotions. And interesting enough, I experience them not that often. So
Have you ever read Audre
Yeah, jealousy
Lorde?
is fun. Mm.
I've seen the quotes on the Facebook.
She just has this
I
whole
haven't
entire
read it.
book. Oh my gosh. I forgot what the name of the book's called, but it's like she just like has all these essays where it's like this feeling's really important because it like helps you under like she has this one essay called The Uses of Anger. And she's like, your anger is really important because it reveals it, you know, it kind of puts a spotlight on something you need to focus on. And it just reminds me of what you're saying about like jealousy and anger, where it's like you're learning something about yourself. It's saying something about you that you should listen to. And so I just
Send
really
it
like
to
that.
me.
I will. I'll look it up. I'll send it. Yeah.
I think it's in a book of like her, like a collection of her writing or something like that.
And each essay is a banger. I love Audre Lorde so much.
Audre Lorde's fucking amazing. Audre Lorde, Patricia Hill Collins. Honestly, you put a black feminist in front of me, and it's fucking, and I'm having fun. But yeah, I guess like the jealousy as fun, like for sure. Like jealousy can be not fun, but it is fun sometimes to feel jealousy. For me, it's fun to create jealousy because I found that like obviously talk to your fucking partners beforehand, but you know, if I come to a partnership, or I've had it happen where I know, like in the same day, was you know, had one partner, slept with one partner, was driving that partner somewhere on the way to meeting up with another partner, and both of them knew about it. And the other partner almost like, I don't want to say like tried harder because that's not accurate, but like it makes it like Lua was saying, like almost like a little bit more spicy in the sense that like this person knows I'm going to leave them and go fuck someone else. And it definitely adds another dimension to it where they're like, and this isn't to say that they do things that they don't want to do, because that's not true, but it kind of opens a lot more, sometimes can open a lot more possibilities, and also can, I don't know, make people feel activated and energized in a way that isn't necessarily detrimental. Especially if you have communicated about this beforehand. Like, I can't stress that enough. Fucking talk about it first. You'll figure out if you want to do it or not if you're talking about it. You'll also learn how it might make you feel when you talk about it too. If you start talking about it and it starts making you feel good, then you might actually realize, okay, this is something I want to do. But in the same vein, then, you know, going to the other partner, they knew I just fucked my other partner and then was coming here. So then they're doing a similar thing that my other partner was doing in that time. And that day was very fun. Because like in 24 hours, I had a lot of really great, like activated sex with two people that I really enjoyed being around.
Yeah.
I love that. I love all of it. Thank you so much. We did have a question. I actually was kind of curious about this too, about queer platonic relationships and maybe how polyamory ties into that. Do you all feel like you have a couple minutes to address that and then we could wrap up? Is that okay? I know we're a little bit over. Or do you even have any thoughts on that? Maybe if you don't, we can just wrap up.
What was the question?
I think the original question, let me find it.
I guess I'd ask for like queer platonic to be defined too.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's part of the question. Okay, so this was the original. Would LJ have thoughts on polyamory in the context of queer platonic partnerships? My understanding of queer platonic is kind of what I think the reason they pose this to LJ is because it's sort of what LJ's been describing as, feelings towards someone where it's kind of a friendship, but it's kind of something else and it's really hard to define. That's how I've heard it sort of described. And it seems to happen a lot in queer spaces where, all the boundaries are kind of blurred with your relationships with people. But my understanding is also that you're still not necessarily in a set quote unquote romantic relationship with that person. It just feels like there's some other element to it for you. And in the chat, please someone correct me or add to that definition if you want. So it seems like something that would, to me, from hearing all of you speak, it almost feels like it's kind of an inherent part of polyamory rather than something that would be analyzed like outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like some people's primary partner is a QPP.
Mm-hmm.
And some people say queer platonic partner, and there's other names for it. I use the term zucchini for my most recent queer platonic partner. So like, oh wow, I don't know what a couple is, but like if there's like a couple privilege and someone's living with someone, but it's a queer platonic partner, and that person also has, a romantic partner, that queer platonic partner can still have couple privilege, like if they live together, but it's a completely different type of relationship. That being based in the fact that it is not romantic in nature. Again, it can be quasi. There's terms for like a mesh relationship when there's some romantic feelings, some sexual feelings, like not completely one thing, any type of altruist attraction. And you can have a queer platonic partner where you have that type of like mesh of feelings. But essentially, having someone in your life who is a queer platonic partner means you mean so much to each other. You love each other so much. You vibe well. And you have committed to engaging with each other. That's the key term, is that you've made a commitment to be in each other's lives. Does that mean you live together? Are you co-parenting? Do you live in different states? It can look like so many different ways, but that commitment piece is really what changes it. So for some people who are polyamorous and practice having committed relationships, that could just be another partner. It's just a different type. So if there's more questions there, I'd be interested in talking about it. But essentially, if the question is that part of it? Yes, absolutely. Definitely part of it.
So
Bellamy, I hear you thinking.
Yeah, I have a thing. Like I asked for this to be defined because I wanted to make sure that we were talking about this, I think, in a way that I understood. But now that I'm here, I'm going to do the me thing that I usually do and say that I don't give a fuck about definitions, because I don't. To me, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter for me to define my relationships. The questions I ask are hyper specific. what am I getting out of this? What do I want out of this? What do I want this to be? Not in the sense that like, what word am I going to call this, but like, what is this going to do for me? This relationship. How can I participate in the relationship? And what, are we collectively getting out of this, essentially? What are the boundaries of this relationship? What do we do? What don't we do? What are we okay with? What are we not okay with? However that fits into whatever definition other people put on it is their business. But for me, I don't start from this is a queer platonic relationship. If I have friends that I have crushes on, then I have friends that I have crushes on. And that's it. If I have friends that I fuck, then I have friends that I fuck. And that's it. If I have someone that I'm dating that I consider a friend, then okay. If I consider them a partner, then okay. Like, that's just kind of how, I don't know if I'm using this term properly, but this sort of like radical acceptance. Like, okay, this is what this is. Like, this is what we're doing, and then that's fine. I had the conversation with my therapist about it, like, however many months ago when I was talking about my current partnership, because I'm like, I was having this like pseudo crisis where I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Where is this going? And realized like it doesn't actually fucking matter what this specifically is. What matters is, are we getting what we want out of this relationship? Is this relationship reproductive? Is this relationship fulfilling? And for me, if I'm meeting those goals, then I literally don't care about anything else. It doesn't fucking matter.
Interesting. Lua, do you have anything you want to add?
I think not on this, because I've already said a bit on polyamory and friends that I think might be redundant.
Yeah, I feel like that tied in really well to the overall topic. Yes, I want to thank you all for coming. This was such a good stream. I could listen to all of you talk all day. Would love to have you back anytime. So thank you for making the time. BP, thank you for showing up in the comments. That was really sweet. I hope you're feeling better. And I want to thank everyone who showed up to watch the stream and engage with us. So as I stated in the beginning, everyone's socials are linked below. So please follow these people on all their platforms. And we'll see you on the next stream. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.